Do you compare yourself to others in business and it makes you feel worthless? Or do you look at your competitors and think, why can't I have a business like them? Why are they better than me? What am I doing wrong? And how come they have a thriving business and I just can't seem to get there? Well, you need to stop doing this right now. Thinking like this is extremely harmful to you and your business. So you just need to stop doing it, okay? And I'm going to show you why it's so harmful to you and your business. And I'm also going to show you the steps that you'll need to take to make healthy comparisons to what your ideal business looks like. And this will give you long-lasting benefits both to your mental health and the well-being of your business. My name is Richard G-Cornell, and this channel is dedicated to helping people create their own destinies through business. Now, I've been in business for 30 years, helping brands sell more of their products and services, but more importantly, this has given me a deep understanding of how to start, scale, and promote businesses effectively. But most importantly, I will show you how to cope and succeed in your business journey whilst enjoying it along the way. So let's get into it. Now, would I be a hypocrite if I was to tell you how to stop comparing yourself to others in business when I did exactly the same thing? I still do it from time to time, but of course I would. There is no way I could expect you to give me your time watching this video if I haven't done exactly the same as you and I wasn't able to show you why it was so detrimental to my business and what I needed to learn to change this constant self-sabotage. So just to be clear, right? After 30 years in business, I'm completely comfortable with where I'm at within my businesses, but this has taken me years to master because it's in our nature as humans to compare ourselves to others, whether it's in business or even life in general. And I can tell you that you're not alone in doing this, but hopefully by the end of this video, you will go away with helpful strategies to help you easily identify when you notice you're doing this, and most importantly, when it's beneficial to compare yourself to others in business. Now, from as early as I can remember in business, I looked at advertising agencies of whom I wanted to be like, right? I looked at their businesses and I thought, wow, one day I'm gonna have a business like theirs. And yet, as the years went by really quickly, I noticed that these competitors, they were growing more rapidly than my business. They had bigger clients, which they seemed to get easier, or at least I thought so, right? These agencies had a lot more employees than my business. They worked in better locations than where I worked. They had much bigger offices than mine, and they seemed to live a life that looked very different to mine and I suppose more appealing, right? But there were so many of these things that these agencies seemed to do better that would just seem better than my agency, and to say that it got me down would be a massive understatement, right? It left me feeling down on myself and it made me feel inferior. It made me feel that I wasn't good enough, and it left me questioning everything about my self-worth and my ability to compete in this highly competitive market sector. So why did I beat myself up like this? And why didn't I understand that everyone and everything is different in this world, and that it wasn't healthy for me to constantly compare myself and my business to agencies that I shouldn't be comparing mine to? For years, I simply couldn't understand that what I was doing was really unhealthy, but I just couldn't help it, right? But as business owners, we are taught to compare ourselves to our competitors. We're told that if we don't do this and that, then we won't survive. We're constantly bombarded with social posts about how to be strong and only the toughest will survive. So it's only natural that when we don't see ourselves accomplishing these milestones, that we just feel worthless, right? But what I've learned over the years is every business, right, it's different, and the way in which we operate our business, it's unique to us and our circumstances at the time, right? The way in which we operate our business is our choice in how we do so, yet the way in which we guide our businesses through the various growth stages, it's dependent on a lot of outside influences and restraints, and yet in knowing this, why do we constantly try to compare our businesses to others, and then if we don't live up to these expectations, we're left feeling depressed and incapable of achieving our goals, right? We just don't see behind the scenes of other businesses or business owners. So how can we form an opinion on how well we think our competitors are doing in relation to ours? It would be much easier if we had a crystal ball and, we could see the ins and outs of these businesses that we compare ours to, but we don't, So forming an opinion based on our insecurities and assumptions, it's simply not healthy. Now, we don't live the same lives as other business owners, right? We don't know how much money they're earning personally, how many hours a week that they are working, or even if other business owners get to see their families because they might be a slave to their businesses. We simply don't know. Yet we look at them with envy, and as a result, we compare ourselves to something which it's just unfounded, We don't know how profitable these other businesses are. We certainly don't know if they're carrying a mountain of debt just to operate their businesses. We don't see the stresses they have in facing to achieve their monthly targets and so on. And we just don't see if their employees are happy and content in working in such environments. We simply don't know, right? It's formed on assumptions. All we see is the facade of their websites and the clients they claim to be working with. From the outside looking in, these businesses are supposed to look successful and inspiring, right? They probably are, but notice how I just said probably. We simply don't know how well these businesses are doing, yet we compare ourselves to them and we're constantly living in a revolving door of doubt and complete uncertainty. But business is all about uncertainty. Business doesn't care if you have 1 employee or 100 employees. The whole idea of being in business is to create our destinies, right? Which is about us and not others. And in creating our own destinies, we need to take a step back and ask ourselves if our business is in line with our expectations of the life we wish to live for ourselves. Does our business give us a life where we can live comfortably, or does it make a profit that coincides with our way of life? Does our business give us some sort of freedom that perhaps other businesses simply don't provide? What is it that we are chasing, right? This constant self-sabotage, it's so harmful to you and your business because it doesn't allow us to concentrate on what you want from your business, and it also leaves you experiencing ongoing disappointment when it shouldn't be like that. If you constantly live like this, then how are you expected to get the drive and motivation to keep moving forward when you're feeling inadequate? Now, I can tell you from experience that if you don't see it for what it is, then you will never be able to move forward. And look to the businesses that you should emulate, and you'll be missing out on opportunities that you just won't see because you got blinkers on the whole time, right? And it's really holding you back. So now let's look at the 5 steps required for good business comparisons, right? Now, it's fair to assume that we all understand that to be successful in business or life in general, we need to look at the ideal version of what our perfect life or business looks like. But what does that ideal version look like and how do we find it? Which brings me to the first step. Step number 1. What is our ideal version of a business? I suppose you need to start from the beginning, right? You need to have a clear picture of where you are now and where you want to be in the future. Now, this is the very first step in the timeline of events and actions that you're just simply going to need to take. Right now, once you can see the end goal, then you will understand that achieving your end goal won't happen overnight. Now, let's call it I suppose, the benchmark, right? But before you just go searching randomly for businesses you wish to copy or emulate, you need to be honest with yourself and be content with everything you need to do in order to achieve your goals. Now, ask yourself, is the business I really want to emulate in line with my goals? Am I prepared to do what it takes to achieve the goal, like working late every night, giving up experiences, going without or sacrificing things that could hold me back in achieving my goals? Do I have an idea of how long it might take me to get my business to that level? And do I have enough working capital to get my business to achieve my goals? And do I know how to implement the right teams, systems, capabilities simply to make it happen, right? You basically need to be 100% all in turning your dreams into reality. And if you can answer these questions honestly, then you are fine with the sacrifices you need to make and you're well on your way to getting there, right? So if you are all in and you're cool with this, then you need to constantly make your mantra, I'm content and I will stop self-sabotaging if things don't work out exactly the way in which I thought it would, because I can tell you now that you're gonna face hurdles every step of the way, but as long as you can remind yourself of this, then the self-sabotaging, it won't stop entirely, but it will be less frequent and you'll be better at coping and identifying when the sabotage starts, and then you'll be completely at peace with your decision. Which brings me to step number 2. Implement a plan of attack. Now that you've identified your ideal business, right, then it's time to start searching for competitors in your space that you wish to emulate, right? And when searching, try to take your ego out of it and simply look at the way in which their business presents itself to market, because ultimately, if you want to be like them, you'll need to ensure that your business appears next to theirs to be able to give you the same opportunities that they have, right? Now, you will need to select a handful of businesses that you think are sort of in line with your own product offering, right? And then you need to do the following. 1, analyze who their clients are and work out a plan of attack on how you'd be able to attract clients like theirs. 2, evaluate their website, look at their socials, look at how they communicate their offering and voice to market. 3, see if they advertise or how they market their business, right? How they promote it. And then look at their staff profiles to see what their staff or future headcount could look for you. And then check out their branding to see how effective it is. And then lastly, evaluate their communication pieces from the way in which their content is written and how they deliver it to market, right? Now, you will need to follow them regularly to ensure that you get to know every aspect of who they are and how they communicate. Very important, which takes me to step number 3. you need to create a budget, right? If you can locate their staff profiles, and you should be able to establish or estimate approximately how much money you will need to hire that many employees, right? But in doing so, you don't want to get down on yourself if you think you can't afford that many employees. This is more just to see what the end goal looks like. And from there, you can start to formulate a staff hiring plan of attack, which is in line with the work that you need to attract. But just to remember, right, to start with the employees who can add value and earn you money, especially if you're still in your infancy stages. And you should only hire employees when the time is right and not before. I could go into a heap more detail on this, but there's a video that I made on this about how I make a budget and stick to it. Now, this will teach you how to hire when the time is right. And this video also dives into how to apply a budget for your entire business. And I've been using this budget for 30 years, so it's worth watching. Which brings me to step number 4. Create a timeline for your plan, right? Now, by creating a timeline for your growth, you'll be able to create milestones for each part of your growth journey, let's call it, right? But you need to be realistic with your growth and only grow if you have researched everything and you're in a position to do so, right? Very important. Now, remember, not to be in such a hurry to grow. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't grow quickly if everything checks out, right? It's great. But quick growth can also be detrimental to your business, especially if you don't have a well-planned model. So you just need to be really careful here. So set yourself realistic expectations for growth. And when you have your milestones down, you can then see what you'll need to implement for each step in your journey. For example, right, if you have identified that you will need to employ, say, 5 new employees over the course of a year, then you'll need to identify how much additional profit you will need in order to pay for them. And then you will need to determine how you will achieve that additional profit to do so, either from advertising or getting new business or implementing new systems. Only you will be able to identify what it will cost you to take on more work. So make sure your plan is solid and you have an idea of the true costs involved here, right? And the final step to consider here brings me to step number 5. You need to reward yourself with kind commentary. And what I mean by that is, once you've achieved your first couple of milestones, you should then reevaluate everything to see if you're still on the right track with your business goals, right? And in doing so, you should remember to reward yourself. And I don't mean go and buy an expensive sports car. I mean, you should congratulate yourself and remind yourself that you're succeeding. And in time, this will minimize your self-sabotage. You need to remember that business, it's a journey that will consume your life. So you need to remind yourself of this, and you need to be completely on board with your decisions and be happy with the outcomes and turbulence along the way, right? You need to be kind to yourself, and you need to celebrate each little win, no matter how small, because the big wins, they just don't come that often, but it's the small wins that you can enjoy much more frequently, and they make you feel good. So having said that, with wins also come losses, right? So you need to factor this into your way of thinking and ensure that whatever you lose along the way, you can try to pick yourself up and not self-sabotage in the process. Now, this is much easier said than done, but you can't give up. You'll need to be persistent and think of the bigger picture, so to speak. So the key takeaway points here, I just want to recap on this, is 1, stop self-sabotaging now. 2, understand why you're self-sabotaging. 3, apply the steps to create your dream business. 4, constantly evaluate your processes. And 5, enjoy the ride. And if you can do everything mentioned here, you will have the tools to stop comparing yourself to others in business which are not in line with your goals. And then I can tell you, you're going to stop self-sabotaging. Now, this wraps up my video today. Let me know in the comments below if you self-sabotage when comparing yourself to others in business, as I would love to read them. Also, please subscribe, as I have videos coming out every week, so I'd love to keep you on board and let you know when they are coming on. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers.